I'm sitting here with the amazing Asha Ranx, who has recently actually done his own reggae album, and you recorded it in Jamaica, did you?
Recorded that one in Jamaica. I mean, I've released it a few years ago now, John. 2021 it first came out, but it's still out on all formats, digital formats.
Yeah. So 21 to me is like is like yesterday.
And me, John, as well. As time goes on, it's modern, isn't it? I mean, 21. I mean, we're coming from back 78, 77.
Yeah. So those times were interesting times. I mean, I probably first met you when you were with was it Hammer Sound?
Hammer Sound, that's right.
Yeah, which was one of the two big sound systems in Ipswich.
Exactly.
People don't think Ipswich had this kind of scene, but it was.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It was an important scene, and
you're right, John. People don't realise that, you know, the parents, my parents came here from Jamaica. My dad came over 56, my mum came over 58. Now the reason they actually ended up, because my dad first went to Peckham Rye in London, but the reason they came to Ipswich in the end was due to the fact that Ipswich had the engineering companies.
And it had housing as well.
And housing, yes.
Because people sort of had the choice between Coventry and Ipswich, and Coventry were better wages. This is what I've heard from the old guys.
That's good, yeah.
Better wages, but it was easier to
My
get.
dad just came here because he didn't like the job. It's like some leather and tan shop somewhere.
No, that's bad for you.
He wanted to come to there. He heard that there was money to be earned in the engineering. Him and my uncle.
So what was that? Ransoms.
That was Ransoms, yeah. Ransoms, Sims and Jeffries.
Yeah, which were because your Ransoms. Now, who were the two? There was two Ransoms firms in town.
My dad worked for both because he started off at Ransoms, Sims and Jeffries, but his main career in the end ended up at Ransom and Rapier.
Ransom and Rapier. So
they make the overhead cranes.
Yeah, so Sims and Jeffries were lawnmowers and such, weren't they? But the big,
very big,
still
going today, John.
Yeah, but they put the label on it now and just make them in Germany, don't they, or something?
I think the firm's still up there, isn't it? Up in Napton,
yeah. So, but Ransom Rapier were doing. They did huge things, cranes.
Yes.
Railway turntables. If you see a railway turntable anywhere in the world, it was probably made by Ransom Rapier.
He did love working for Ransom and Rapier. They got troubled times in the end with Maxwell, didn't they? But
yeah, well, you know, I think anyone involved with Maxwell had troubled times.
But yeah, so if we go back to the original where we were talking, John, where people don't realise the sound system. So a lot of Jamaicans basically did end up in Ipswich because Jamaicans and Caribbean people ended up in Ipswich because of the work, really. The women would do the mainly nursing and stuff like that.
And there was already a musical sort of heritage amongst the parents, wasn't it? Because there was two sort of, you know, we're only a small town. It had two steel bands. It had Caribbean and Trinity.
Yes.
And so, you know, there was music was there.
Music was there because even before the sound systems, I mean, even my background, we'd have the radiogram in the front room. I don't know, most Jamaican and West Indian parents, they'd have two rooms downstairs. One room you couldn't go in. That's not the room with the television, that's the room with the radiogram and the music and the vinyls. So basically how I actually got into the music was that my parents would have parties on a weekend, invite a few friends over, maybe 10 to 15 people, and I'd be so fascinated by the radiogram.
Yeah. Just can you turn off turn the sound out on the television?
Yeah, you're going to edit it anyway.
We're just I like it rough. I like this. I like it real, keeping it real.
Yeah, we'll turn that out.
Yeah, so
we're at the point where I got interested in music. So we're talking now, really, because I was born in 1960. So I started to realise stuff around about 1964 with the radiogram. Became interested.
Yeah.
became interested in music, and
Yeah.
parents would have parties, and I'd be that. My dad, I've got to give him the props because he'd let me control the music.
Yeah. So how did the sound system develop in Ipswich?
Well, that's because again, it's due to the fact, probably in Ipswich more, due to the fact we had Celestian down here, didn't we?
Yeah, so this ideal combination of Celestian that made the speakers,
The loudspeakers,
and a substantial, quite a significant Caribbean population, and a lot of young.
There's only one thing going to happen after that, isn't there, Joe? The for the sound system.
And at that time, and presumably where did you first hear sound systems? Did you go down to London, or did you just hear it, or people talking about it, or?
I'll tell you what, the first sound I heard in Ipswich was a guy called Cantacular.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's Edward's family. He was, funny enough, I think he used to play down at Cutler Street, which is a church hall, isn't it? So that's the first sound system I heard. It wasn't a massive sound system, but he had a setup, a good setup, using 18-inch speakers and stuff like that. So that opened up my eyes. I was only about 14. Went to the dance down at Cutler Street.
So when did you all get together? When did the sound system, Hammer get together?
Okay, now that went further down. We got together around about, that would have been 1977, because what actually happened was that I was interested in Tom Flowers had a sound, used to play at Gardeners Arms. This is really the first big sound in Ipswich. They had a session down every Sunday night down at the Gardeners Arms. So all of my generation who were interested in reggae music, we'd all go up there or down to the Gardeners Arms to listen to Tom sound. With this, you had groups of youths in Ipswich. You had Bopper, Benji, Fred, Toots, myself. Bopper actually built a sound. So I was like, because I was, those days we'd have our own selections of music anyway, so I had a selection of music. And then Bopper gave me a chance really to spin some tracks on his sound.
Yeah, Bob is still going. Bob Rankin is still going strong.
Yeah, still going strong now. So that's him really why I got first break. This is before Hammer.
Yeah.
So there was another, and so Bob was from town, and he had a few town people in his sound, and a few people from Napton, Heath, sort of thing, Napton area. I was from Napton area. So that got established. Then after Bopper was established, we were running dances over the Gardeners Arms ourselves. Then there's another sound of Witten called Danger Man. Those are the Lee brothers, David, Peter.
Yeah, and Zebby.
Yeah. Zebby. So they were running Danger Man sound. Bopper was running Bopper sound, which I was part of. And Tom was the daddy. Sounds.
Yeah,
so what then ensued was there was a competition in 1977.
That was up in the town, in the council chambers, wasn't it?
That was in the council chambers town hall. I can't remember who was the promoter. I'm not sure if it was Roy Bernard, was it? I can't remember the promoter. But
could have been what, Spot Records?
It wasn't. Slightly before Spot's time.
Yeah. So
I can't exactly remember who promoted it, but we know that there was a cup.
Yeah.
So what happened was, because as we were playing a sound, Danger Man had a sound, that competition then inspired us to get together to try to match up to the number one sound, Tom sound.
Yeah.
So we got together and formed Hammer Sound.
And I think where I came in roughly about the same time as that. maybe I, because I had the vans. The only reason I was involved was because I had a Luton van, which you could get these huge speakers and wardrobes, virtually. And yeah, so
So that's the birth.
but my sort of consistent involvement was when Paulette Reed had that weekly. She ran a sort of weekly youth club down at in Turret Lane,
Okay.
and there'd be
Stretching my memory now.
the
name Paulette Reed rings a bell.
She was Cliff Reed's. She used to run the Caribbean Youth Club in the Caribbean Centre, but before that, there was at the back there was Tower Rampart School had an annex in Turret Lane.
Okay.
And that closed down and became, various things. It's a bunch of yuppie flats now. But then there was a weekly youth club, which was
what year was
this would be soon after the town hall thing.
Okay.
And there was Preacher was I think kind of involved with that, and everyone paid £0.50 a time, and the money went to the sound system.
You're definitely jogging my memory is being jogged here.
Yeah.
What about St Nicholas? Is this anything to do with St Nicholas?
No. That was one of the ones that because St Nicholas is. Oh, I know that came later. I think.
Did it? Okay.
But that weekly. So there'd be the weekly thing, and whoever and the sound system took turns.
Okay.
So it'd be Tom's turn one,
because if Preacher was involved at that time, that probably would have been Negus sound, I would imagine, which was Brian Bramble. Preacher, Terry Maloney.
Dan
might have been involved. Yes. With that side of.
Yeah, because I remember I remember coming through town and I stalled when you could drive straight through. And I didn't stall. I was sitting there.
Yeah.
And the car in front of me stalled.
Okay.
We were on our way home, and the policeman ignored the stalled car and came straight up to us.
Okay. You looked a bit more interested, didn't you?
Yeah, we looked more interested. And by the time I think we got up to Whitton, there were cars everywhere, and so everyone just sort of gathered around the policeman and confused him. So he, because he was asking for producers, he was handing out producers, but none of them had the right information on. It was a great lesson in non-violence, non-violent resistance.
Okay, so you killed him with lyrics. So going back to the competition, it's quite important, I think, because
I think it's pivotal.
Because so you had Tom Sound, he was obviously the big sound of the town. You had Hammer Sound, who just got youths who got together. Then you had Opia Sound. Opia were known as the Lovers Rock Sound. Glenn Butler, Owen Butler, Pat Alexander was with them that night.
Ah, yeah.
He was with them that night. Unfortunately for them, they broke down that night. They had technical problems, so they were sort of out of it. Now, to be honest with you, Tom Sound was the cleanest, heaviest sound in that arena that night. But the night will be remembered because you've got to remember that the Lees had their brother used to play, Dennis used to play Tom Sound as well. So he teased his brothers and said to his brothers, well, tell you what, if you play a dub plate, which is like an acetate steel plate, if you play a dub plate tonight, we're going to give you the cup. Little did he know that we went and pressed a dub plate that night, and it's the first dub plate I can actually.
So can you explain the listeners the difference between a slate and a dub plate?
Okay, so those days, people call it a dub plate now. Those days, people call it a slate.
Yeah,
it's basically an acetate recording, which is about a sound system, so that only that particular sound system can play that track in the world. So there's an interesting story behind the way we got this dub plate is through a friend. We had a friend. It was a friend of a friend. Really, it was Isaac Ture, rest in peace, and Brian's friend, a guy called Richard Cowley. So he had access to studios and he was a musician, and he laid down this track for us, which we did play on the night, but we didn't get the cut. But the interesting story about Richard Cowley, his son is the famous crime artist Wiley.
Really?
Yeah.
So everything connects. Everything connects.
So from that route there,
yeah,
from the early 70s.
So what was the name for records that the mass-produced ones? Because it was because I remember in London they'd go no more so and so slates only.
Okay, so they call them 45s, don't they? So 45s are just commercial vinyl tracks which are for sale.
Yeah.
So, but I suppose the difference was that in those days it wasn't like today where you could just download anything off the internet.
Yeah.
Those days you would actually the records were coming in from Jamaica.
Yeah.
To specialist shops in London.
Yeah.
So as a sound system, we would have to go down. Our shop was in Dalston Lane, M&D Records. So we'd go there on a Friday night after work. We'd meet up. Peter would drive us down because Peter had the car those days. We'd drive to Dalston, and you'd be like at an auction. So the guy would be behind a bar type thing. He'd have his amplifier and his vinyls behind the bar. He'd play the records. Us as punters would come in, the customers would come in, and you'd have maybe a row of 10 to 20 people in this small shop. And he'd play the track, and he'd look at you, and it'd be like bidding. So you'd have to put your hand, if you want that track, put your hand up, and he was really super cool, fling a track to you. You put it there, and sometimes you'd want a track, and there would be no more because it was limited.
Yeah.
Because obviously, because it was on vinyl, he might only have 5 of that Dennis Brown track or Gregory Isaacs track. He wouldn't have he might have 5 of that one, 3 of this next one. So even the vinyls in those days, or 45s as they call them now, they were limited still. They were still limited.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, I remember even, back in Scar times.
Yes.
I'd go into, there was a little record shop under the arches in Brixton, under the row arches in Brixton.
Yeah.
And I'd wait there for, because they had the record player on the counter.
Yes.
And then and the railway workers would come in and ask for things, and I was white boy down there. There was no access to it on radio or anything.
Yeah.
And I'd just be listening, and then when I heard a track I liked, I'll have that.
Yeah. And then he'd put it down for you.
Yeah.
So that was the way things ran in those days.
Yeah.
So as far as in competitions. It was rare because the competition those days was a huge thing, because that would have definitely been the first. There was 2 competitions that I recall in Ipswich. One was 1986-85, one was 77. And obviously the one in 77, we didn't really have no chance. Tom won that cup quite easily, really, because he had the biggest setup, the best amplifiers.
Mm-hmm.
We were just youngsters learning, pretty young years, learning the trade. But we did surprise them because we played something which they couldn't play. So as far as I know, we were the first Ipswich sound to play a dub plate.
Yeah, talk about the amplifiers, because they were custom made, weren't they?
That's right. Those days, we didn't even, it just shows you the knowledge, was because Tom lived in London. He knew the guys, amplifier builders. When we first came into the sound system, I remember Bob buying East End bargains.
Oh yeah, Ivan up at East End bargains. Yeah, he saw that, wouldn't he? Whenever we wanted anything, he'd find it for us.
Yeah, so he got the old valve amplifier.
Yeah.
But with Hammer, moving on a couple of years, 1 or 2 years, I remember we were using M&D transistor valves.
Yeah.
These weren't custom made, these were just made for more like PA systems.
Yeah.
That's what we were using because we didn't have the knowledge or the.
Yeah, it's like the HH stuff, what transistor.
Yeah, we were using that kind of stuff to power our speakers. It wasn't until later on where we met with Judd Tubbies, who built his own preamplifiers and amplifiers. This would have been mid-80s where we'd have our custom stuff built for us. But pre to then, to get into doing sound systems, we would, because it was all about knowledge in those days, knowledge of who you know then. Tom was living in and around London, knew the amp builders, knew the preamp. He had a proper preamp. We were using a disco mixer, sprayed black. Sprayed black so people wouldn't know.
Yeah, I sort of, I remember, and things got more and more elaborate, didn't they?
Exactly, things got more advanced as technology does get advanced. It was funny enough, as you said, at first it was like everyone was having custom stuff. Then as the years went on, it then became, once you got the knowledge, you were then using PA stuff really.
Yeah.
Stuff which PAs would use. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then eventually we met with different engineers who actually built a set for us, customised. Yeah. So yeah.
So can you explain the crew of a sound system? Because you know, like you know, the selector, the guy on the mic, and all that sort of thing.
So in a sound system, you have various compartments. You have the box boys. You have the selector, who selects the records. That's what I am, selector. So in those days, for instance, we would have parties. This is the days before the Caribbean Club.
Oh yeah, and I was going to talk about the parties, but go on to it.
So as we're talking about what a sound system involves, it involves a selector, an operator who plays the amplifier and puts the bass line in and the treble, tops, the mid-range. He'll play the set to a certain way where you can hear the vocals in a track, and he'll be mixing it basically, the operator. Selector puts the records on, then you'll have a technician whose job it is to wire up the set to make sure that everything works. The box boys, because they were the box boys and the van, which is yourself, the van driver.
yeah. We were the bottom. You know, we were way down on the totem pole.
But yours is very important because we had people like you, people like Owen Butler, my missus's brother, who drove the Lutons and to get us to the venues.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
carried those
enormous.
I mean, it's amazing. You know, you could probably get the size of a microwave these days. You know, you need something the size of a wardrobe, literally huge double wardrobe there. I remember Zebby one day, big Zebby. I was in my Luton, and he put David, and he pushed this, and I. You know, we were just getting on, and of course you slid it down the back.
Yeah.
And I was up against the back. Zebby, just pull it back and then put his line get out.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Because, like I say, these were all, and even further to that, Zebby used to be our box builder, really. Because he's got carpentry skills, you see. So in those days, we would build our own. We wouldn't go to the shop and buy a box.
And that was part of my band driving too. Was collecting these big boards from places.
We used to use over. Can't remember the name of the shop name, but before Juice's and all these type of places,
there was a place in Woodbridge Road, wasn't there?
There place in Woodbridge Road. There's a place at White House where we'd get our chipboard, plyboard from, and you had to be creative. You had to have somebody who was basically a carpenter. We were lucky we had David. He was the carpenter. So
and there was one of the youth sound systems down in just opposite the college. You know, there's those little road council houses just off Road Walk, and there'd be the back garden because you could get to the back gardens with the van, and you know there was. I'd be booked to take a sound system somewhere, and they'd still be built, they'd still be constructing it. So,
Yeah,
just hold on, we've got to finish building this box.
so, as you say, John, you know, when I think about it, people were creative those days, because if we wanted something, we had to design it and think of how we wanted it, what size, the amount of different boxes we built. These ones are too big, these ones are too heavy. You know, we keep completely.
Yeah.
What we wanted was to be able to build a box which was small enough, but still carried that
Boom.
that
big
weight.
base.
And that was a hard thing to do, because we tried to do smaller boxes, but you didn't get the weight. You didn't get the weight. So then we designed the box with 4 speakers in, which I believe we were definitely the first in Ipswich to do that. We used to call it a quad box. So that would have four 18 18-inch speakers in, and these we brought into Bolton Lane. This is the.
Oh, that's that's Bottom Lane. That's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about
that's what I'm clicking now.
Yeah. It's all clicking in.
Good.
Isn't it?
That's what I'm
we called it Bolton Lane, didn't
yes,
we?
Bolton Lane.
Yeah.
Because Bolton Lane came before the Caribbean Club.
Yeah. Because there was, there was a lot of politics there.
A lot of politics.
Because Bolton Lane, that was left spotless because it was yours.
Yes.
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 I mean, on paper, Paulette Reed,
she was the front.
She was the front, but but it'd be left spotless.
Yes.
And when they got the Caribbean Club, they persuaded the guys to give up Bolton Lane because they would have a place in the Caribbean Club. Okay. And
so
there were, and that got very muddy, and and especially the. And I was always part of the annual general meeting, sort of trying to fight stuff because they basically squeezed the rasters, didn't they? At that point,
they did at that point because I'd like to talk to you about pre that point, because we're talking about 77 with the first sound clash in Ipswich. OPR dropped out, technical problems. Hammer couldn't quite come up to the plate, but played the first dub plate on the sound system in Ipswich. Tom had an established sound system, he got the cup. The next thing out of this now was the bigger sounds like Tom, Hammer would generally play at the Manor Ballroom, big halls, in and around Ipswich. But these halls would finish at like 12 o'clock midnight. So in a way, in terms of nightlife, wasn't good enough. So what then happened is that people would run parties in their own council properties, basically. Yeah. We'd call those blues parties. Blues parties,
yeah.
So the sound systems would be running blues parties. So you'd have a blues party one night in Whitton. You'd have one the same night with a different sound system in Gainsborough. So Tom would be playing in Gainsborough, for instance, Tom Sound, Shanty Sound. They'd be playing in Gainsborough. Hammer Sound would be playing in Whitton. Opiate Sound could be playing somewhere in town. So you could even have like 3 parties or blues parties in one night.
Yeah, I know. I was running between all of them.
And then what would generally happen on these occasions is the sound that's carrying the swing, which say carrying the swing. In other words, people, if one blues party was half empty or whatever, people would say, "Where's the other blue?" They'd check out where the other blues was, and leave that party and then come over. So there's a rivalry between the sounds.
Yeah.
To get the crowd, because to come into those blues was £1, a fee of £1.
Yeah.
But within these blues, you'd pay a fee of £1, and then you could then go and buy rice and chicken
and so forth,
and hot meals, and you could get a drink.
Yeah.
And then we established where I remember us getting buying a technological thing for the day, which was a portable black and white TV set.
Yeah.
Putting that up for raffle. You then sell the raffle tickets on the night.
Yeah.
and then this all became popular to get people to your.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean,
things.
that was going on as soon as the Caribbean population got. Not necessarily in Ipswich. The blues, those blues parties might have been. It's your generation that started them in Ipswich, but I remember in the '60s going to blues parties in Islington and stuff. You know, and they were huge. You know, the streets would be full. You know, and we'd just turn up. There are three white guys, and they go, "Who invited you?" We'd go, "George," and come in. You know, and then there'd be. I mean, that was crazy. You know, there'd be a fight starting. It'd go out onto the street because it wasn't allowed to happen in the house. You know, there was. And there was usually a woman that held the money. The money disappeared just in case the constables came around. There was no money to be seen. But that goes back. I mean, it's with both the clashes. I mean, culturally, what's interesting is that it goes back to really early in the Caribbean and especially America, black culture. Right through African American because the jazz, you know, they put like your sound systems, they put a jazz trumpeter each end of a hall, and it was who could blow the other one out. So King Oliver was Louis Armstrong came from. But that's the clashes that go back to that, and then of course all those blues guys, which is probably why they may be called blues parties, because they were rent parties. And all those people like Blind Blake and things were playing rent parties around Chicago. I've done one. You know, I'm short on the rent, so I used Chris Connolly. You remember Chris Connolly, the singer, quite near here, and but he had a cellar. And I can't remember. I think it was probably Hammer came down to that, and that covered my rent for the month. It was literally a rent party from my point of view.
It goes deep, John, doesn't it? When you really check it out, where the music is coming from and how this transpired then into the blues from Ipswich, the blues what were happening in Ipswich. And then it got to be such a problem that the council then became involved because they couldn't have these blues dances going on, and because people would obviously be complaining because you're playing thousands of watts at night
in the middle of a council estate.
Yes, so that couldn't go on.
Never mind the people turning up.
Never mind the people. You know, so that's a big disturbance. So then the council did realise, and like I said, you're reminding me now of Bolton Lane. I think Bolton Lane might have been the initial.
And then it was closed. And then initially there was the sound systems weren't given. Really, they just occasionally were allowed in the Caribbean, but not a lot. And then at that point, the council. This is sometime later. That the sound system started. And I think maybe that was after the occupation of the civil liberties. Iskry, who was next door to the Caribbean.
I remember we had a lock-in, didn't we? What happened was we had a protest because we wanted That's it. We had a protest. We wanted the Caribbean Club for ourselves. I'm pretty sure it was that we had a protest, and then after that's when things moved on.
But it was also about police. People were fed up because people were being pulled in quite a lot.
Stop and search was regular.
So they got, what was it, 3 o'clock in the morning licence?
Yes, it did. Caribbean Club did, and to be fair, we had a good run in there really because all the sound systems had a fair share in there. Tom used to have his dancers there. We had our dancers there. The council were happy because there were no more blues dancers.
So that was the bargain that was struck.
So everyone was happy. So.
Yeah, no, I remember years later, because they survived for a long, long time, because I remember Phoenix Theatre Company from Manchester were playing at the Wolsey, and a Black Theatre Company from Manchester, and I took them up to the blues night afterwards. And of course, it had all died in Manchester. And they said, this is like a, this is like a cultural experience for us. And
Yes,
so, there's that continuum. And, also I think, what's interesting, although, it doesn't exist in the same way, there's been that development. I mean, Ipswich has been, from that, it kind of, became a centre for drum and bass with Red Eye and records.
And scene and stuff like that. And don't forget on our side of things, with the sound systems things, there were bands as well. We had Joe Warriors, so we'd be intertwining with them. We'd have our gigs, and we'd have featuring Joe Warriors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was probably promoting them.
Primway Street and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, so, I used to put. I mean, I put you on. And I remember one day I had Benjamin's Up and I down, and I put Ben on because in those days it was difficult to get a white audience to go to a black place and vice versa. And and so I was running things in the downstairs in the Albion Mills. And you'd all come and I'd mix it up with the poet and the sound systems and stuff. But I brought Ben up one day and I had him up one day and. That was so one night in the cellar, and then the next night for 3 o'clock in the morning, with the blues dance.
Yes.
And the rest of the song, and and that was, it was very active.
It was vibrant those days, wasn't it?
But then there's a whole new generation coming up now.
Yes, of course, because you've got the sound system as well coming up now. I think probably one of the Courtney Malik, Ashanti.
Yeah.
So you've got them. Missile came in probably the early 90s.
Yeah.
With their own thing. I think the thing nowadays where what is missing is obviously in our days we had a central thing where we could base our gigs.
And all those have gone.
Things are scattered now.
Yeah.
So there's not really a base.
Yeah, I mean, I see things on YouTube.
Definitely missed that.
There's bits down the snooker club, isn't there? Down by the docks, there's I think there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it certainly had an effect on the people that are producing music, young people that are producing music.
Yes, definitely.
That's never stopped.
No.
And and some people that have been around for a minute or two, like your good self.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this crossover almost back to Jamaica.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I know Lloydie goes to Jamaica to do stuff, and
because of the internet and everything else now, it's made things a little bit more accessible, and because it's easier to travel now, that's how I got to do my album, My First Lady. So what I did is I went over to Jamaica, got a rhythm track made up, and then got that rhythm track voiced by a few known artists and a few unknown artists who had talent. And so I've got that album out on the street today. The biggest track on the album is from an artist called Pinchers. The track's called Mountains to Move. I believe that's such a nice track. But I think the album is pretty conscious, whereas I think people nowadays gravitate towards badness and you've got to be better than this and better than that. But I believe that it will come around that it's something I'm proud of really to leave in my legacy, because when people hear the album after I've passed or in the future, and it's going to be conscious lyrics and inspiring.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there was a lot of consciousness around that time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
70s, 80s,
that's why I had to do that conscious album, really, because I know from those times there, as conscious youths and rusters and we wanted things to do things right, not violence or guns and knives and this, that, the other.
Yeah, and everyone was fighting for a place.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, a lot of the generational stuff was, about, like your parents' generation had fought for their place, and they thought, what are these young upstarts doing?
Yeah.
and then which is natural.
Yes, of course.
Now, in retrospect, we can see it as natural.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
before,
definitely
you know,
Before
people,
you
before
might-
we
you
were
might-
quite insulting about it.
You might have been fighting against it, but it's true.
You know,
it was a massive thing they did to
yeah.
uproot from their
Yeah.
place of birth.
And then get the Caribbean and everything else.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then
exactly.
then they you know, there was a reluctance, like, you know, that's a natural generation thing, a reluctance to, maybe to understand what was happening, and from their point of view, you lot were rocking the boat. You know, we just got in here. We just got accepted
Because
you bunch of Aries.
Exactly.
And not going to rock in the boat.
Use are naturally rebellious, aren't they, to the system?
Yeah.
But when you check it out, we weren't even. I mean, to what I think time has moved on now.
Oh, nothing. It's nothing.
We were like lambs, really, because we were only doing things which could uplift people, really.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were trying to roughly-
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no,
yeah.
that's where we're coming
Well,
from.
yeah. Well, there's. I think that, you know, that gives a sort of thank you for that, because that gives a picture of that time, and you know, and Ipswich in that time.
Yeah, definitely.
And so thank you, Asha. Nice one.
Nice one, John. Good to talk to you.
Right.
That went all right, didn't it?